Good day, everyone. So this is our next topic. Actually, this is just a continuation of the previous one we had. This one is an introduction to the branches of philosophy. The last time we talked about the definitions as well as the origins of philosophy. Again, it is important to understand what philosophy is all about before focusing on the subject of ethics, which is the course you are taking right now. So philosophy, we said last time, it is science, according to one of our definitions. So as a science, philosophy also has different branches. Last time we also pointed out that philosophy begins in wonder. So again, when we wonder, actually we begin to ask questions. And philosophic wonder is the experience of being confused or perplexed about the biggest questions you can ask about life, about existence. And then when you begin to ask these questions, actually you also begin to think. And that is how philosophy begins. You start to ask a question. And in fact, according to another definition of philosophy, it is the science in which questions are more important than answers, because answers themselves will later on become questions. That is according to Karl Jaspers. So you see, in philosophy, answers may come after a very long process of thinking. So in philosophy, it's okay if we don't get the answers right away. What's important is that we are able to raise questions, that we are able to ask the relevant questions. So as a discipline which deals with questions, in which questions again are more important than answers, there are different branches of philosophy that deal with different kinds of questions. Okay? And these are the major branches of philosophy. And this will be the topic for this lecture video. The first major branch of philosophy is called logic. Okay? Logic is basically defined as the science of correct thinking, or the science of correct reasoning. So etymology of the word logic comes from the Greek word logos, which means reason, science, or it can also be translated as truth. Okay, so as the science of correct reasoning, correct thinking, logic asks the following questions. What are the principles of correct reasoning? What makes an argument correct or valid? And what makes an argument incorrect or invalid? Okay, what makes an argument incorrect or invalid is a fallacy. And how do we know that an argument has a fallacy? What is a fallacy? So today you engage in different kinds of arguments. Maybe an argument with your parents, an argument with your friends or with your boyfriends or girlfriends, or even an argument with your teacher. So in logic, we study the different principles that guide our thinking to construct and evaluate correct reasoning. So if you look at social media, for example, many people are arguing there. But if you study logic, it's easy for you to point out how fallacious these arguments are, some of them. And that is one great thing that you can get from your study of logic. Okay? So before the change in our educational system, before college curricula were revised, okay, logic used to be the basic philosophy course that college students are used to study. But now it is changed to ethics. Okay, again, so that is logic, the science of correct thinking, one of the basic major branches and one of the most important branches of philosophy. Next is metaphysics. Okay, this is considered as the fundamental branch of philosophy. Okay, metaphysics is defined as the science of things beyond the physical. Okay, meaning to say, things that could no longer be perceived by your external senses. That is, those are things that are perceived by your mind. So the term metaphysics comes from two Greek words, meta, which means beyond or after, and physis, which means nature or anything that is physical, something that can be perceived by the senses. Now this branch has two sub-branches. First, general metaphysics or ontology, and the special branch, which is further divided into three: Theodicy, rational psychology, and cosmology. So let's deal with them one by one. General metaphysics or ontology. This is the science of the first and ultimate reasons, principles, or causes of beings. This is somewhat similar to one of the definitions we gave for philosophy. Because again, metaphysics is the fundamental branch of philosophy. So what do we mean by beings? Basically, in philosophy, being is that which exists. In simpler terms, something that exists. Anything that exists is called a being. So this is the main focus, the subject matter of general metaphysics or ontology, study of the first and ultimate reasons, principles, or causes of all things that exist, of beings. So we study the reasons why things exist, the causes that account for the existence of beings. So the term ontology comes from two Greek words, on, meaning being, and logos, meaning science or study. So here are the questions in metaphysics or ontology. What is being? So what do we mean by being or existence? Why do things exist rather than not exist? Okay, so why do things exist in the first place when in fact they could not have existed at all? What's the reason behind their existence? Or more generally, what is the nature of reality? Okay, so these are fundamental questions in study of ontology or general metaphysics. So as we go deeper into metaphysics, we have its special branches. First, theodicy. So theodicy generally is defined as the science of God's being. So there is a specific kind of being that exists, we call God, and the being or the existence of God is studied in theodicy. Specifically, theodicy is the science of the justification of God's goodness in the face of evil. So if you remember, one of the questions we raised last time is that why do people suffer? Now, suffering is a form of evil, and if evil exists, how can a good God allow such evil to happen or to exist? So how do we justify that God is still good when in fact evil exists in the world? That is one specific issue tackled in theodicy. So etymology of the word theodicy: theos, which in Greek means God, and dike, which in Greek means justice. So questions in Theodicy. What is God? Or what is the nature of God? What is his nature? If God is all good, then why does evil exist? Next, we have rational psychology. This is defined as the science of the soul. So in Greek, psyche is the word for soul, mind, or consciousness, and logos is the Greek for science or study. So this is the science or the study of the soul. Questions in rational psychology. What is the soul? If we have such thing as the soul, what is it? What is it like? What is its nature? Is the soul something material or is it immaterial? Is the soul mortal or is it immortal? Meaning to say, does the soul have death or does it have no death? Does the soul have freedom or is it free? And how do we experience freedom? Okay, next and the last special branch of metaphysics is cosmology. This is the science of the nature and origin of the world or universe. So etymology, the word cosmos in Greek means world or universe, and logos means science. So the science of the world or the universe. So just like the ancient Greeks who asked about the origin of the world, these are the questions in cosmology. What is the nature of the world? What is its origin? Where does the world come from? Is the world finite? Meaning, does it have a beginning or an end? Or is it infinite? Meaning, it has no beginning and no end. And the different elements that constitute the world of the universe. We have time. What is time? Is it an objective thing? Same with space. What is space? Okay, these are the questions in special branch of metaphysics, cosmology. Next to metaphysics, we have the third major branch, epistemology. This is the science of knowledge. So in Greek, episteme, one of the root words for epistemology, means knowledge. And logos again means science or study. So the science of knowledge. Questions in epistemology. What is knowledge? What makes knowledge valid? Or in other words, how do we know that what we know is valid or true? For instance, we commonsensically believe that the things we experience are real, our knowledge of them is valid. But how do we really know that the things we know as true is valid? If you've watched the movie The Matrix, okay, that movie actually presents a very epistemological problem. So the movie The Matrix is very philosophical. So you can look it up. Because the movie tries to present a setting in which we humans are actually just wired up or connected to a computer, a super machine, a supercomputer known as the Matrix. And this Matrix provides us with visual illusions, and we think these illusions are real all throughout our life, but actually they are just virtual illusions. So it presents an epistemological problem. How do we know that what we see, what we know, what we experience, how do we know this is real? And the last major branch of philosophy is axiology. This is defined as the science of values. So value is something we attach meaning to. So in our life, we attach meaning to things. And when we attach meaning to things, we actually create value. That's why things that have meaning to us are called valuable to us. Value is actually the meaning that we attach to things. So the term axiology comes from the Greek words axios, which means value, again logos, meaning science. So this major branch of philosophy has 3 sub-branches: aesthetics, political philosophy, lastly, our course, ethics or moral philosophy. So we begin with ethics first. Ethics is also called moral philosophy. This is the science of the morality of human actions. What do we mean by morality? Morality pertains to rightness or goodness and wrongness or badness. So basically, ethics is the study of the rightness or wrongness of our actions, human actions. So some of the questions in ethics are: what is a good action? What makes a good action good? How do we know that an action is good? What principles determine a good action? What is the good life? Because supposedly, if we do good actions, then it will lead us to the good life. But what is the good life? And ultimately, how should we live our lives as humans? How should we conduct ourselves? Okay, this is the study of ethics or moral philosophy. So good and bad, or right and wrong, they are considered values. That's why ethics is part of axiology, or the science of values. Next is political philosophy. This is the science of politics, the state, the government, of liberty or civil freedom, and justice. There are quite a lot of things discussed in political philosophy. So politics is also one of the main topics in the study of philosophy. So the term politics comes from the Greek word politikos, meaning civic, constitutional, and public. Questions in political philosophy rather. What is politics? What is the nature of politics? What is the state? And what is the purpose of the state? What is the function of the government? Why does the government exist? What is liberty? Or social or civic freedom? What is justice? Now these things such as liberty or freedom and justice, again, they are values, political, social values. That's why this branch is part of axiology. And lastly, we have aesthetics. This is the science of beauty. In Greek, the word comes from aesthetikos, meaning relating to perception by the senses. So the things that we see, some of them we consider as beautiful. So how are we able to know that these things are beautiful? What is beauty? That is the question in aesthetics. Is beauty something subjective, or is it something objective? Okay. Do we judge things as beautiful simply based on our own subjective preferences, or is there an objective and universal standard to beauty? That is aesthetics. Okay, so that would be all on the different branches of philosophy. And again, all these questions, they are questions about things that exist in reality. And as we go over these questions in philosophy, we try to look into their first and ultimate causes, reasons, or principles.